Dear friends, welcome to this fifth video in the series of reducing operational cost and increasing profits. Today, I'm going to talk to you about one of the fastest way to increase throughput and also increasing profits. And this is constraint management. Every organization somehow has a constraint. Now, you have a constraint when there is a scenario where you are able to deliver more and sell more and make more money from your customers, but are not able to do it because these constraints are blocking you. Now, constraints can be a capacity constraint like a bottleneck machine, which we call as physical, or constraints sometimes also can be policies like the way we decide to manage inventory in our organization, the way we decide to manage time in our organization, or maybe even the way we have decided to measure and monitor performances in our organizations. In the many organizations I have been, very frequently we find out that constraints are policies rather than physical constraints. This is because policy constraints are more difficult to identify. Now, there are problems when we have constraints. The first problem is we are not able to identify the real constraint. We may be thinking that we have a capacity bottleneck and we may be managing it, but the capacity bottleneck machine may not necessarily be the real constraint. The real constraint could be some policy, or maybe it may not even be that particular machine, but it is another machine or another process. This is because we have not used the right methods and the right approach to identify the real constraint. The other problem when we have constraint is we know that this is the constraint. We have identified the constraint, but we do not have sufficient methods and skills and knowledge to manage it effectively. We do not know how to make the right decisions based on constraint management methods and calculations. Now, these always lead to an organization either not sufficiently making enough to sell to customer, or losing out on the opportunity for extra revenue, or maybe even extra cost incurred because we are spending more than what we should be spending in managing our bottlenecks. I want to share with you 3 case studies of constraint management which I was involved. The first one was a large organization, a highly automated factory who had a big bottleneck in one of their major processes. This prevented them from shipping the demand which was needed by the customer. Every week they were losing numbers. And it is because of major quality problem and major machine breakdowns where the engineers were struggling for months to try and solve it. When we did a bottleneck diagnostics, we found out that there were things which we could do within 48 hours and can turn around these operations and increase its throughput by at least 10%. And that is exactly what happened within 48 hours. And what did that result to? Almost $2 million of extra revenue, because the bottleneck machine determines the throughput of the entire organization. The 10% increase was about $2 million worth of products being sold within that period. Second was an incident where the company did not know exactly how to make the right decisions on the correct product mix. Their bottlenecks, of course, could not make all the product mix to meet the customer demand. So what they did was, using traditional cost accounting assumptions, made a decision to run the product which had the lowest raw material cost as well as the highest sales price, ending up to find out that they were actually losing money at the end of the month. When we applied throughput accounting based measurements and calculations, we found out that it was the wrong product mix, and we corrected it, and within a week the company went from a loss to a marginal profit. The third case study is a classic example of where a company has already identified its bottleneck, but they were not able to manage it in an effective manner using proper inventory management methods. Because the non-bottleneck machines were all optimized to run at their maximum capacity, this was causing a big inventory buildup right in front of the bottleneck machine, causing them hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of throughput generating possibilities just sitting there not being able to be processed at the bottleneck operations. We used a certain methodology called the drum buffer rope methodology, and within weeks, once again, the company was able to reduce their inventory by almost 50% and save another $100,000 worth of investment on material cost. Now these are examples which actually led organizations to increase their throughput and eventually their profits within weeks using constraint management methodologies. I would like to suggest 3 things which you can do immediately to apply constraint management techniques in your organization. The first thing is you may want to exactly identify where your constraint is. Your constraint could be a capacity restraint machine. Your constraint could be policies. Your constraint even could be decisions which you are making. Now, many organizations have not been able to identify what exactly is their constraint or where exactly is their constraint. The one question you want to ask is, what is the one problem which I am having? If I solve, I will be able to sell more to clients tomorrow, or I will be able to make extra profit tomorrow. Now that could be your constraint. So the first thing you want to do is go and identify your real constraint. The second thing you want to do is micromanage that constraint which you have identified. Usually, the step which you will take in managing constraint immediately after we have identified a constraint is going and exploiting it by managing it in a very minute level. We need to do that so that we know that the constraint operation or the constraint process or the policy which is causing the constraint is removed immediately and leading to increased throughput within a very short period of time. The third thing you want to do is formally go into constraint management methodologies. Explore what these methods are. Learn methods of throughput calculations and throughput accounting to make decisions. Learn methods of managing inventory based on constraint management. Dear friends, in the many consulting engagements I have been to, I have found out that constraint management is one of those things which can bring about a change in your profits within the fastest period possible. So constraint management is a very critical aspect of reducing operational cost and increasing profits. So I hope you will be able to learn some of these methodologies and use it in your organization as soon as possible so that your profits go up and your throughputs go up and your cost goes down. Thank you very much and see you very soon with another video in this series.